What's up, my friends? Welcome back to the Business of Tattooing podcast. Super excited to bring you episode 24 with a very special guest, the one and only Mick O'Herien. Mick is the current president of the Alliance of Professional Tattooists. We're going to get way into the weeds with Mick. We're going to talk about his incredible journey as an apprentice under the one and only legendary Shotzi, his involvement in the APT, what his calling was to the regulatory landscape, becoming an advocate for the tattoo industry, fighting oversight and overregulation. This is a very critical conversation, one that you all need to hear, and it's a conversation that really paints a clear picture of where the tattoo industry is today and where we're headed in the future. Thank you for joining me. Let's get into it. First of all, thanks for coming on the show.
Dude, thank you for having me, man. It was cool to get that email.
Well, I've been looking forward to this episode probably a lot, actually, because...
Really?
Yeah, well, what better person to have? I talk about the APT on pretty much every episode that I do. I'm really trying to spread awareness and get the word out there and let tattoo artists know, because surprisingly, a lot of tattoo artists that I talk to, especially younger tattoo artists, are not familiar with the APT at all. Like, they don't even know that we exist. And,
right.
Even I got brought into the APT basically through Ben Shaw. I mean, he's the one that kind of recruited me to the effort. And ever since then, I've really been trying to, be a strong advocate and really spread awareness and just get more tattoo artists, get those membership numbers up.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit alarming to me when I talk to, some artists and they're like, what's the APT? And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what the APT is? I mean, that's a little bit concerning to me. So that's why I was really looking forward to getting you on here, because I did want to, get into it with you a little bit about, I know you're the president. You just took over as the president recently. So I do want to talk about that and kind of, if you've got it figured out yet, maybe you don't, but hopefully somewhat you've got a battle plan laid out a little bit in regards to how to increase membership and get awareness out there. And so I did want to talk to you about that a little bit. But before we get into all that, you've got quite the legacy in the industry. You worked with Shotzi, and I want to talk about that a little bit, and just get your lineage kind of put out there for people that don't know who you are. And we'll start there. I think that's where I always like to start the podcast. Just kind of get to know you a little bit and your involvement in the industry, how long you've been here, and just kind of what your roots look like.
Yeah. Well, I started off just getting tattooed. The first tattoo I got was at Philadelphia Eddie's before I joined the Air Force. I was trying to be in a band, playing guitar, ended up in Philly, got a tattoo. And it was just kind of like one of those bugs that catch you, I mean, every one of us has dealt with that. And then throughout the military, I got tattooed in different locations, and I ended up being stationed in Alaska, where I became friends with a guy who owned a shop that did piercing and tattooing. And I had gotten out of the Air Force, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't want to necessarily work at a thrift store, organizing clothes the rest of my life. And he goes, Mick, why don't I teach you how to pierce, figure out your life, and go from there? And if you stay in the business, it'll be good to you. So I started working as a piercer and started my apprenticeship up at Body Piercing Unlimited in Fairbanks, Alaska, under a guy named Kevin McKinley, who was gauntlet trained, which is kind of cool. And then I moved. My now ex-wife wanted to move back to her hometown in Ithaca, so we moved back to Ithaca. I finished up my apprenticeship at a spot called Steele's Body Modification that was in Ithaca from the 90s. And, went through the divorce, moved around the country, ended up working at Shotzi's Tattoo because of a band that I was really good friends with, got me the interview with Shotzi because they were friends with people that worked there. So I came out and I sat down, and the first thing Shotzi does is introduces himself, and it's like, he's a man that never needs an introduction,
Right.
you know?
Right. Legend.
And we sit down and he pulls out these tarot cards. And I'm like, what is going on? At this point, like, I'm just like, I thought I was here for an interview. I didn't realize, like, my fortune was gonna be told, but I didn't want to say anything because
Right.
this is Shotzi. And he does his tarot cards and he goes, okay, um, you're gonna start next month. I said, okay, well, right now I'm living in Indiana. Like, I got to get some things. He goes, okay, I'll see you next month. I go, all right, great. So I get hired at Shotzi's as a piercer. And I'm there and I'm working. And I mean, throughout my whole life, I've drawn, and now I have this unlimited amount of references in this, historic shop. So here I'm just drawing and drawing and drawing. And a spot opens up at his studio in '04, and he goes, all right, Mick, it's your turn. You're gonna learn how to tattoo. Shotzi, like, no, 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 no. Like, I never wanted that. Like, I can't tattoo. I mean, I'm just drawing. Look at these, like, how am I supposed to, put something permanent on people's bodies? It's Mick, that's what we're doing. You start tomorrow morning. Be here, and I'm going to teach you how to make needles. So I show up 10 o'clock in the morning, and he says, this is the way it's going to go. He lays it all out for me. He goes, but the number one thing that you need to understand is you will only get out of this business what you put in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't put in, you will be a taker and you will be put out. I said, all right. So I go through my whole apprenticeship with Shotzi, and that concluded. And all of a sudden, like, I'm this tattoo artist, and I'm almost this reluctant tattooer. I've been reluctant in every move forward that I've ever done because and a lot of artists have this. I have this almost this imposter complex of
Right.
like, do I deserve to be here? Do I deserve to have what I have and be in the positions that I'm in? At that point, Shotzi sold his business in 2006, and me and the new owner, we didn't necessarily see eye to eye. So it was time for me to move on. And I moved on. I worked at a shop, and then I was working at another shop, and that owner was just like, listen, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I want you to buy the shop. And I was like, I've been tattooing 5 years. There's no reason I should be owning a shop at this point. He goes, well, it's either that or you find another job. Like, oh man, like, and again, like having that imposter syndrome being like, do I deserve to even be a tattoo artist right now?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, well, I guess I'll buy the shop and we'll figure it out from there. So I buy the shop, I build it back up. We do really well. And at this point, I'm in my second marriage, and I wanted to move a little bit. I wanted my shop to be a little bit closer to where my home was. At that point, I was driving about 40 minutes to work. And I just wanted to get out of like the urban area of New Jersey. At that point, I was in, you know, uh, it was Guttenberg, New Jersey, which is right outside of North Bergen, but right next to in between the George Washington Bridge and the Lincoln Tunnel. And I just wanted to slow down a little bit. So I opened up a shop up in New York State called Revolution Tattoo Company and started building that up in 2011. And, we're doing good. We're having a lot of fun. And then all of a sudden, I was at a convention and I get a phone call from a friend of mine that says, what is going on in your district in New York? I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, they've just passed this law about single shot ink cartridges that, is you can only use one per tattoo. This is all we're going to do. They've already made it law. Cuomo has already signed it. I said, okay, I'm going to be back on Tuesday and we'll get this figured out. So I get back on Tuesday. I call a few people. I call the office because the person from the senator from my district was the one that put in the law and was the co-signer on it. And so I call his office and I say, hey, I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand why this is a need, but I'd like to sit down and talk to you about it. And, that heavy metal punk rock kind of kid in the back of my mind started chirping. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be the only one talking to him because we're a community here. So he agreed to come to my studio. And I then called everyone I knew in New York State and ink manufacturers that I knew. And I said, be at my shop at 10 o'clock in the morning. I can't remember exactly what day it was, but I had 100 people show up to my shop and greet the senator from New York. And we had a conversation, and we had a great conversation and he listened. And then we did that again in at a Cliff's Tattoo in Center Reach, New York. And then, there's this girl, Bridget, who really pushed the online aspect of things. This is really when the online ideas were getting, the online forums, and it was just really exploding at that point. And she really pushed the topic all across New York. And I spent pretty much all of the rest of 2014 and then all of 2015 working on this. And within 8 months, we had it not only repealed, but also taken from the hands of the legislative branch and put into the regulatory branch within the New York City or the New York State Health Department.
Wow.
And so the whole ink shot thing was killed, and we're able to continue doing what we're doing. So from there, I worked with another an amazing woman, Pat Sinatra. She's been tattooing for a long time, and even worked with Shotzi for a long time with his old magazine called The Tattoo Advocate,
Mm-hmm.
which is ironic in its own right, Uh, and she said, listen, we have the APT. I was like, yeah, I've heard of the APT. She goes, I want you to join. I said, okay, well, and at this point, because of what was going on and how long I was always out of the house and stuff, my second marriage had kind of fallen apart.
Sure.
So I was like, I've got to figure this out. And then when it's time, I'll come to the APT. And so, I ended up you know, joining the APT, but not becoming a board member. And then in what was it, 21, after everything happened with the pandemic and we were all starting to come back, I had applied to be on the board, uh, and was accepted onto the board. At the same point, the owner of Shotzi's that I didn't get along with, who fired me back in, you know, 2007, came to me and said, I want to get out of the business. You're the only one that I think should have Shotzi's name. I want to sell you Shotzi's. Uh, and so I had a conversation with my at that point, girlfriend, now soon to be ex-wife. Uh, See, that's the one thing that I've noticed in my tattoo career is that I become an advocate for tattooing, and I lose a significant other over it.
Priorities, man.
I know. Except for the woman that I'm with now, man. She's really supported me on this. But anyway, I talked to her about it. We put the money together and we buy Shotzi's.
Okay.
Um, and it was this amazing homecoming walking into, the old shop and just being like, holy smokes, like this is where my tattooing career began. This was the legacy that I always wanted. Um, and I ended up being Shotzi's last apprentice,
Right.
and for me to be able to carry on the torch was amazing. Shotzi and the guy that he ended up selling it to originally, they didn't get along. They had a rough patch. So when I took it over, the first thing that when it was even proposed to me, it was I called Shotzi. I said, Shotzi, I have an opportunity to buy the shop. And he goes, you're the only one that deserves it. And like it really hit me hard, to
Yeah, I bet.
have, that man look at me, and I looked him as like as a father figure.
Yeah.
And for him to say like you are the only one that deserves it, made me feel like okay, I'm doing the right thing. So after 16 years of Shotzi not being allowed and around Shotzi's tattoo, or even to tattoo in the state of New Jersey, I brought him back
Wow.
and he was able to tattoo in his shop again. And the funny thing is when he was coming in, I said, all right, Shots, come on over. This is my booth, but it was your old booth. So this is where you're going to be tattooing. He said, no, I'm not. That's your seat now. And it's like, even now, like it kind of like gets me because to be given that respect and that love from a man that brought me in, he
Right.
goes, I'm going to go sit in the back in the guest spot, which was my old station when he taught me how to tattoo. So here I am sitting up in the front working and he's sitting in the back where I worked. It was like this change. And it was so amazing and like healing for him, healing for me, and healing for Shotzi's tattoo as a whole. And like it really made me feel like what I was doing was right.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
quite the story. That's powerful. Yeah.
yeah.
Super
This
humble guy.
this right here was a painting that he did in 2001. And when you turn it over here, let me see if I can pull it down real quick. On the back, it says, congrats on your rise. Much respect and love, Shotzi, 2022.
That's super cool.
And this is something that had hung in his office the whole time. And he painted this back in 2001. So,
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible, man. That's an incredible story.
and then here I am, still the reluctant tattooer of Shotzi's. And, after I took over Shotzi's, I'd become the vice president of the APT. And now the president, which again, like to be the president of such an amazing historic organization is it's a weight on the shoulders, but it makes me proud to be able to be where I am and who I am, and in a time where it's needed
Right.
more than any other time that we've dealt with in history. It is needed right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man, that story, man, that just really that's emotional. You can feel the power there. That's crazy. Thanks for sharing all that. Like that was deep. Um, and I'm sure really like deep for you just to reflect on that. That's really powerful. That opens a lot of questions. I don't know if I want to ask a lot of questions about all that right now, but definitely at some point in time I want to connect with you on some more of that. But one question is like, how much had changed in the shop since, Shotzi sold it to the other guy and you were gone, and then when you came back, was it still pretty much the same as when you left, or did it change a lot, or what was the vibe like?
It was a very different shop. the guy who bought it, and I don't want to put anybody down, but he was more business oriented than he was tattooer.
Mhm.
So when I got there, all of the flash was off the walls. The flash racks were down. There was pictures of, magazine articles or pictures of paintings, but not tattooy paintings, like things that didn't make sense to me to be in a tattoo shop. And I also noticed that it was more of, and I say this kind of tongue in cheek, but it was more of like the inmates running the asylum.
Sure.
And so when I came on and came back, the first thing I did was I closed for a weekend. I took everything down with the help of a gentleman that worked for me, and he's still with me. He's amazing, Brian. And we repainted the entire shop. We took all of the flash that I'd accumulated over 19 years, and we hung it frame to frame all over the shop. We put up references. We put up, everything, and we took it from it was painted this green and yellow color, which was what the colors that the old guy was trying to use. And I was like, but it were these very muted colors, and I was like, this feels more like a pizza shop to me than it does a tattoo shop.
Right.
So I was like, I painted it teal, hung up all these frames, and it just really came back to life.
That's awesome.
And
So
it's
you
awesome.
brought back the original vibe back to the shop, the
Yeah.
original heartbeat.
Absolutely. And I feel that that is the biggest need in the tattoo world right now, is that heartbeat, that vibe, that people come to us not for just amazing art. People come to us for an amazing experience. This is as much as a performance art as it is a actual art. Like, we have to take care of our customers and be with them while giving them quality artwork on their body. And that's the one thing that Shotzi's always said, is that they're going to be your next electric bill. They're going to be your electric bill for August of 2022. But you are going to be their tattoo artist for the rest of their life.
Yeah. I like that comparison that you made, and I never even really thought about it like that, but it makes a lot of sense because I think like I always compare different art forms, like I'm just a lover of art in general, whether it be music, painting, performance arts like theater, all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But when you said that, it really made me think of like some of the emotion that gets elicited when you go watch a good theater performance, like you feel that emotion on the stage, you know what I mean? It just sits with you and it just resonates with you. And I like that you use that as a comparison because it's absolutely like hit the nail on the head perfectly because that is something that we don't think a lot about as tattoo artists, like the impact that we have on a client, and we do talk about it a lot in a negative way, more so, I would
Hmm.
say. We talk about how artists oftentimes don't have good bedside manner or they don't know how to make that connection with a client. And even in today's world where the tattoo world is what I would consider very shaky today, like it is
Hmm.
a very uncertain place for a lot of artists. I think in my uh, conversations with people, what I'm getting the most is that the artists that are doing well are the ones that know how to keep that connection strong with their clients. The ones that aren't doing good are the ones that don't know how to do that, that are just looking at a client like my next paycheck. You know what I mean? And they're not
Right.
focusing on that client connection. So thank you for making that. Uh, Thank you for making that reference because I think that resonates really well with what we're seeing today in the industry.
Yeah. I had that very instance happen this weekend. I was walking around the Ren Fair with my girlfriend, and we stopped to do axe throwing out of anything. And this guy walks up to me and goes, "Oh, it's good to see you." And I was like, "Yeah, good to see you too, man." And he goes, "You've been walking by. Like, I thought it was time that you came in through Access." I was like, "Actually, this is the first time I've walked by." He goes, "Well, then how do I know you?" And I go, "How do you know me?" I go, "I tattooed you back in 2021 on your shoulder in Pearl River, New York." He goes, "Oh my God." You know what I mean? And like he took my number and everything. And but to him, he was like, he knew who I was. He couldn't complete because I mean, I wasn't in a tattoo shop, like I'm the tattoo guy. I
Right.
shouldn't be walking around a Ren Fair in Sparta, New Jersey. But he's like, I gotta come to you. I saw that you opened up, down in Tenafly now. Like, I want to come down and see you. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, and how do you remember me? I was like, it was impressed upon me very early on that you need to be as important to me as I am to you.
Yeah, I that's crazy because I have a hard time remembering people like after long periods of time myself, and a lot of times though I think it's just more age related now than anything
Mhm.
else, it's where my long-term memory is not quite as great as it used to be. So like but I get that because you're right. When you're outside of your element, when you're outside of your normal habitat and you see someone outside of that element, you're like, wait a minute, where do I know that person from? Oh, but for you to remember that, that's 100%. So has the guy come back and gotten tattooed, or is he going to set up something now?
He texted me yesterday and was like, "Hey, like I really want to come in." I was like, "All right, get through the Ren Fair because you're going to be outside. You're going to be dirty. It's going to be hot. Like we'll talk. We'll talk after September." He goes, "All right, great." So he's already texting me ideas and stuff. So it's really cool, and just to be a human for people to see us as humans outside of the shop is
Yeah,
so important.
yeah,
We are tattoo guys, but I was walking around with my girlfriend and my two kids, and then he's like seeing me be a dad. He's seeing me throw axes and, like it really jazzed them up about it.
yeah, yeah. That's cool. So what did you do with the old shop?
So when, after I'd taken it over, the landlord had changed and the new landlord wanted to raise my rent from what was at that point $4,000 a month to $8,000 a month because he saw me doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I said, "Listen, that's just not feasible. That is not something that is conducive to not only the shop but just tattooing in general. We can't pay those kind of rents." So what I did was I went into a private studio for a little bit and just to kind of clear my head after we had to move out because that was a very quick turnaround. Like he kind of came to me and was just like, "Get out by the end of the month or, you know, or pay me what I'm asking."
Right.
So I went into a private studio for a little bit, reopened here in Tenafly this past May, and everybody that worked for me at the old shop came back. Um, so it that the one thing that I see as an issue of our success, at least in tattooing, is people see our success and they want to latch onto it.
Mm-hmm.
They want to grab a hold of our success and try to bleed us for what they have or for what we have.
Right.
And this was exactly what that landlord was doing. He saw me take over a shop, start to be more successful than the previous owner, and he just decided that he was going to cash in on it. And for us to be able to, for me to stand up and say no, like that's not right, like, and the prices that you're asking is insanity. We got to be able to stand up for ourselves and tell people when enough is enough or when something isn't right.
Yeah, I think from a business sense, at least in my experience, it's just like I hate renting shit. You know what I mean? I don't. I don't, it's just really different. It's always been difficult, even like just living, living in an apartment versus buying a house. It's like I know people have different opinions about it, but to me, I've just always been like really irked by the thought of just, $4,000 a month for what? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
over a year, that's a lot of damn money, right? I'd rather have that money going towards my own like investment, like I'm just gonna go buy a damn building and own it and fuck a landlord.
Right. And honestly, I think the next evolution of Shotzi's will be that. Um, it's right now real estate in New Jersey is pretty out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to kind of calm down. I want to kind of start building it, you know, when I took the time off and I did the private studio, like it kind of it took Shotzi's out of the eye of the people for a little bit. And so now we're trying to build that back up and bring that back to what it needs to be and was over in Wayne, you know.
Yeah, and I think in situations like that, it's a little bit more difficult because you have so much legacy, right? Like
Mhm.
there's value in the legacy there. Like the tarot card thing that you were talking about, it's the energy, right? There's a
Mhm.
ton of energy there. Like years and years and years of memories and just energy that's been created inside the walls of that establishment, and
Right.
that has its own historic value, so it's not easy just to pick up the pieces and move them,
Right.
it takes it removes something from that, so that's a little
Absolutely.
bit tougher.
Yeah. And you're 100% correct on that. Like, you know, I you know, before Shotzi passed, like I told him about what we were doing, where we are going to be and stuff. And I sent him pictures of, as we were putting things together and stuff, and he was really into it. Um, he unfortunately wasn't ever to be in the building, but we're setting something up like I want to do an event where his wife Christine comes out, and she's a tarot card reader and a I don't know if a medium would be an appropriate term. I'm not sure what she uses as a term, but like I want to have her here and come and do some of that stuff with us because again, being part of that legacy, I don't want her to be, forgotten or left behind because that's, you know, Shotzi loved her, you know, more than I've ever seen another man love a woman. Like, and it was one of the most amazing things. And to have her around, I don't want her to be forgotten or left behind. Like she just came out August 5th, she just came out with a tarot card deck that she painted
Really?
herself and put it out. Yeah. And she's working, I hear that she's working on another one. And, so she's doing what she can and she's very artistic, and she does a lot of really amazing things. And, you know, I don't want the tattoo community because a lot of times when the tattoo artist passes, the family's kind of forgotten about or left behind,
Right.
Um, I don't want that for Christine. I want her to be as much if I'm at a tattoo convention or I'm at anything, I want Christine to be there with me because she I am in business Shotzi's legacy. She is Shotzi's legacy as well. You know,
Right.
and she's an amazing woman and everybody here loves her to death, and anybody that talks to her is like, wow, there's something special about her, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It reminds me of like Roy Boy and Deborah. You know what I
Oh
mean? Like
yeah.
you see when you see Deborah at shows today, because she's still out there on the road. She's still going to shows, and she brings all the Roy Boys. Well, not all of it, but she always has something of Roy Boys at the show with her. She's always working to keep his legacy alive. She still has the shop.
Mhm.
It's really cool to see people keep that stuff alive because I think this is important to me. as a 30-year veteran in the industry now, you know, like more and more I feel like we're just really losing that history, you know, like we're losing sight of that. And the generation of artists that are coming in now don't seem to really care as much about that. You know, they're not
Right.
coming up through traditional apprenticeships anymore. They're not doing like what you did, you know, where you know, came up under the wing of someone that was very well respected in the industry and that was very much a huge part of the industry. You know, they're not getting saturated with history like you did, you know.
Right.
So I think it's really cool and it's, you know, admirable that you want to keep that alive because I feel like there aren't enough people doing that anymore.
No. And anybody that comes into the shop, especially as a worker, like they have to have that love and respect for the business, the tradition of Shotzi's, and if they don't, I'm not interested. I'm just not. I have a young guy right now who wants to learn how to tattoo, and we're working on drawing and stuff. And he's of that generation that like doesn't know Shotzi, doesn't know Roy Boy, doesn't know any, but it's up to us as the holders of the torch to pass that information and knowledge on. And at times we have to shove it down their throats because they don't know how important it is. They a lot of the younger generation just sees us as these old gatekeepers.
Right.
Now, I want to share my knowledge. I want to bring good people into the business, So am I gatekeeping in a way? I, I would say yes, but I'm gatekeeping something that I love and care about so much. And I want, if you show me your love and your care for this business in the way that I love and care for this business, then you'll immediately see that gate open, you know?
Right. Hmm. Yeah, I that's a tricky it's a tricky subject, you know, like I've talked
Mm-hmm.
about gatekeeping a lot. I've written articles about it, you know, I've gotten in some pretty heated conversations with some tattoo artists from my generation and even before my generation, you know. It's like it's a very interesting topic with a lot of different points of view in
Mm-hmm.
regards to gatekeeping. I even stopped using the word. I don't even use that word anymore, really, because it's a good word, but it just doesn't like if you start a conversation off with that word, it just kind of automatically like puts people on the defensive somewhat, you know.
Yeah.
So now I go into it and I say like, hey, let's talk about strengthening the gates. You know what I mean? Like not necessarily keeping the gates closed, but you know, if we're going to open the gates, how do we make sure that we're only opening the gates to the right people, kind of like what you're saying, you know, that the
Right.
people that really care about being a part of this, that aren't just like seeing somebody at a convention making, you know, X amount of dollars and then they get like, ooh, I can make this kind of money.
Right.
And all I got to do is go pick up a kit off of Amazon and watch a couple YouTube videos, and that's as easy as it is to get into this.
Mm-hmm.
So
And like the
that's where
the flashy lights, and like I was at a convention this weekend, like the flashy lights, the rock star looking banner with your face on it, or
Ink Master,
all of the Instagram likes. They see this as a way to become an influencer, which is like this new career field for these younger people. It's they can be an influencer instead of, and that's their way to get famous,
right?
like I've reluctantly become who I am because I don't want to be famous. I want to be the coolest unknown guy that knows everybody.
Right. So that's like the perfect segue into talking about the APT and talking about kind of where we're at today in the industry, you know, and why we're looking down the barrel of a regulation um, shotgun, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? Like because, you know, mainstream media, social media, television shows really catapulted the tattoo industry into a whole different stratosphere, you know, really really shined a new spotlight, took us into a multi-billion-dollar a year demographic, and it really shined a spotlight on us to people that weren't ever paying attention to us before. And so now, I know, because we're dealing with this stuff every day, that we're really faced with a lot of challenges in the space today. We're faced with uncertainty in how the industry is going to look in the next 5 years. We don't know. Are we going to have to be doctors in 5 years? Are we going to have medical staff in our tattoo shops? What kind of stuff are we looking at, and how can we make sure that we're protecting our craft and ensuring that we're not going to be faced with all these crazy things like single use ink, like it's magnified 100 times beyond what you were dealing with all those years ago, when you first became an advocate. So I'm kind of curious to know your thoughts on where you think the industry's at today. And then, what do you think we need to be doing as a whole, the ones that really care about this industry? What do we need to do to make sure that we're protecting the future of this industry?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question, you know. Um the way that the tattoo industry, and I use industry not in a way of the manufacturers, the practitioners, and all of the support around that is the industry, right? There's all these branches. It's like if you look at the United States government, we're split up into, the executive, the judicial, and the congressional branches, right? Just like the tattoo industry, we have the manufacturers, the suppliers, and the practitioners,
And the collectors.
and the collectors. So yeah, as a whole, we are an industry. The practitioners is more of the trade in the way that I've looked at it. Right now, what's being picked on right now is in my opinion, is the manufacturers. To make appropriately safe, and what the government's trying to do is completely regulate everything down to the every nut and bolt, which isn't possible in my opinion. They're going to do what the absolute best that they can, but you can't regulate every piece that is in tattooing, or in manufacturing, because things change. You know, things change when it's you know in a bottle for X amount of time, or you know heat, too much, or heat is put on things, if things are cross contaminated, or and the important part that I think needs to be looked at, and which is being overlooked right now, is safety substantiation and safety instruction. That is what needs to be done. Making sure that we are all doing things in an aseptic way, in a way that is, going to keep our supplies and our, clientele safe. Public health, is the big thing. Um, and there's a lot of people that are doing things the right way. I see a lot of manufacturers, like yourself including, like taking a really big stand for what you're doing, and how you're doing it. Now, I do wear two hats in the regulatory side of things. I am, obviously the president of the Alliance for Professional Tattooists, but I'm also a chairperson of the Association for Food and Drug Officials, which is also known as AFTO. Uh, and you know, it's a body art product committee that's trying to what me and a few of the people that are the other chairs and most of the people on this committee are trying to do is trying to, you know, have safe products, but also not over-regulate things to the point that it puts us into this frenzy of almost like the sky is falling. You know, the sky's not falling. People have been getting tattooed with ink and pigment for, you know, thousands and thousands of years. You know, it's like the old saying, you know, the first the first profession was prostitution, but we're pretty sure that she had a tattoo on her, you know?
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly who said that first, but I know I've heard it definitely from Lyle Tuttle and a lot of the other old hats. But we're all okay, you know, and the ink and pigment and such that's in us isn't it has been tested over all of these years, and now because the government sees one thing or another, or they see uh, counterfeit products coming in because of people cashing in on the, you know, the proverbial cash cow of the tattoo industry, getting manufactured in other places and shipped in under less quality. Like now all of a sudden we're being looked at. We're the ones doing the thing. We're the ones doing things right, you know?
Right.
And the people who always get punished are the people who are doing things right, because the people who aren't doing things right don't care enough to abide by the rules and regulations to do things right.
The business of tattooing is brought to you by Electrum Supply, the industry leader in high-quality tattoo supplies designed by artists for artists. Whether you need premium stencil products, top-tier cartridges, or game-changing aftercare, Electrum has you covered with innovative, artist-tested solutions you can trust. Want to elevate your work? Head over to electrumsupply.com and stock up on the best gear in the business. And because you're a listener of the business of tattooing, use code podcast10 at checkout for 10% off your next order. Stay sharp, stay stocked, and stay ahead with Electrum Supply.
And to keep our eye on what's going on, we have organizations such as the APT, where we're trying to make the tattoo trade more federally recognized. Right now, the federal government doesn't recognize tattooers or tattoo artists, however you want to say it, tattooists. They don't recognize this as an actual job. We don't have an apprentice declaration within the apprentice syllabus of the United States, and there's a place where you can look all that stuff up of what apprenticeable career fields are, and tattooing hasn't ever been, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. But if we want to be looked at seriously, we have to start taking these steps and taking these bold stances of saying, hey, we are a legitimate business. We are using legitimate products. And just because there are less than appropriate products out there available doesn't mean that we're using them. Uh, you know, I've seen counterfeit products from out of the major like ink suppliers. I've seen counterfeit products come from everybody, not from them, but mimicking them.
Right.
And they're the ones causing the problems. The selling of this equipment on eBay or on Amazon that's readily available to the public. Now, why can someone go out and buy a tattoo machine, but they can't go out and just purchase a medical facility? we need to be able to, protect our craft and protect our equipment and our intellectual property, and starting with the advocacy and starting and standing up for ourselves and saying, hey, this is what we should be concentrating on. And this is what will come out of that concentration, and things like the APT, things like where me and the other co-chairs are trying to nudge AFTO in, and, some other industry specific organizations that could be coming about,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, we've already talked about the stuff that Sean Brown and I are doing. I mean, that cat's out of the bag. We could talk
Yeah.
about that if you want to
Okay.
get into that. But I think it's interesting. This is a time for education, more importantly to me than anything, right? This isn't
Mhm.
about sky is falling. This is just an opportunity to educate people because I've always I've been a manufacturer now for, 13 years, so I've learned a lot in 13 years in regards to product manufacturing, and I've seen a lot in the way that other people, well, let me scale that back. I've seen a lot in the way there's so much variation in the manufacturing process between people in the space. When I went to the AFTO meeting in Dallas, it really resonated with me when they were talking about how AFTO came to be, right? Because it all started with this mislabeling on food products, like things in the product that weren't listed on the label, or people not being transparent about what's in a product, or how a product's manufactured. And that was really what it was all about: consumer safety, right? That's what spearheaded that whole initiative. And that really resonated to me because I'm like, I've always been an advocate for safe manufacturing. Like, I've always wanted to make sure that I'm making products in the safest way possible, because I realize when I stick a product that I manufacture into your hand as an artist, there's a liability that you assume by using that product.
Mhm.
There's a liability that you assume by putting that product or using that product on your client. And it's my duty as the manufacturer to make sure that I'm handing you a product that isn't going to put you or your client at risk.
Right.
And so that's really where that's really what lit my passion for the whole thing, right? Because I saw a lot of products out there that didn't care about that kind of stuff. Like, this is a problem. Like, this is a problem for me as an artist, because I also wear two hats. I'm not just a manufacturer, I'm also an artist that's using products on people. So I have to think about that from both perspectives. It's not just about, oh, let's manufacture something new today and boop, here you go, start selling it. It's not that easy. It just
Right.
doesn't work like that. We can talk about inks, because I think that's a really key thing to focus on, because you said it. People been getting tattooed for years and years and years, and there's no problem. But there is a problem if it's not manufactured right. And this is where the education part comes into play.
Right.
Because where the problem lies is with microbial contaminants, where products have water in them. Water breeds bacteria if you're not handling it right, if you're not storing it right, if you are exposing it to different things. I mean, just put a drop of water in a glass and stick it up on your windowsill for 2 weeks and come back and watch what's growing in the thing.
Exactly.
It's a perfect science experiment to show you what can go wrong. Water is a problem if you're not treating it properly. And that's what people need to understand. You can look at ingredient labels across, pick up 10 products on your tattoo station right now, and I guarantee you they all have water in them, probably. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So from a manufacturing standpoint, and what the AFDO is doing right now, is really focusing on that safety substantiation and making sure, like, because I'm on the AFDO calls too. We spent a couple
Mhm.
weeks just analyzing water and
Yeah.
what kind of water are manufacturers using? Are you using stuff out of the sink? Are you using filtered water? Are you using reverse RO water? What kind of water are you using? And further, what process does it go through after it makes it into your product? How do you ensure that you're not going to grow microbials in there?
Right.
So, so I think that's where artists really need to focus on, is not the products themselves being the problem, but the process that the products are manufactured under.
Hmm.
And that's where we have to, that's why, you know, organizations like CTS came to be. That's why organizations like now TIMA that we're putting together are coming to the surface, because that's our job as manufacturers, to make sure that we're aligned and that we're following a strict code of ethics and good manufacturing practices to ensure that all the products that are making it to tattoo artists in our industry are safe products,
Right.
are vetted products, are going through a process to where when they get to you as the artist, you know without a shadow of a doubt that this product is safe to use. Here's
Right.
all the documentation. Here's, like what you said earlier, we need to have education on how to properly use these products, how to properly store these products, you know? And that's a big gap in the industry, I feel like, still.
Absolutely. And it's it's making sure that also that when we're going through these processes and creating this understanding, at least in a regulatory aspect, that it's us as the practitioners, us as the manufacturers that are being taken seriously. And it's not people that are going to be, making money off from inspecting us, or putting more regulation in. Like, we need to be taken more seriously than these people who are just feeding off our businesses, you know. And that's one of the things that I've been seeing a lot in the regulatory stuff, especially within like these larger governments, is that there's these special interests where a company or a group of companies will be making money off from like these inspections, or don't fully understand these processes, or don't even care to, creating these regulations for people like yourselves and you know yourself, myself, and making these regulations where they don't even understand what we're doing. They don't care what we're doing. They just care about creating regulations for them to make more money.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're actually caring for, and they hide it under the guise of public health and safety. You know, as a practitioner, as a manufacturer, we care more about public safety than anyone ever will. Because how are we going to tattoo dead people?
Right.
We're not. If we get people sick, we lose our customer base.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's our ass on the line.
Exactly. And they're going to, put their hand out to make sure that we're inspected, or we're, um, licensed properly, which, okay, I get it. But we want to make sure that our clients are safe. We want to make sure that our clients are happy. We care about our clientele and our customer base, and they care about making money. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, we all have to keep our electric on, but when it comes down to it, it's our asses on the line.
Yeah, and I think from a you know, um, we need to form groups like, well, we're forming TIMA because we need to
Hmm.
have manufacturing oversight in our industry. We have to, and not to say that. Well, I mean, I'm okay with saying that. I wasn't going to say that, but I'm okay. We do need to police the products that are being put out in the tattoo industry.
Absolutely.
We do need, because there are a lot of product, like you said, the counterfeits.
Hmm.
Somebody has to have an eye on that. Somebody has. There has to be a way for an artist to be able to go and say, I want to try this product. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about this product. I'd like to try it. I need to go to a website that could tell me about this product. If the
Right.
manufacturer's website isn't doing it, then the TIMA website needs to be able to do that. Or Inktegrity, or however that rolls out. But we need manufacturers to come to us, be part of our group, and be able to be proud to wave that flag and say, "Hey, look, I'm going through the right steps. I'm in the industry. My product has been verified safe for use in this space." And we just know, we need to prove to the government that we can police that stuff on our own. We don't need
Right.
them to come in and say, "Yeah, go ahead."
In so many other industries are doing that. It's called peer review. Before anything gets published on any topic, things are peer reviewed, in medical journals, in I mean, other than most US media, like things have to be peer reviewed, and ideas such as TIMA or integrity, like this is the way for manufacturers to be peer reviewed and allowed to be verified by their by their peers, that it's the absolute best thing and the best way we can go about it. And to have you know the government back us up on that would be huge. And that's why we've policed ourselves for years, before tattooing became the multi-billion-dollar industry that it is. Like, we policed ourselves, uh, and as like barbaric as, like, if someone opened up a shop on you back in the 50s and you didn't like them, or they weren't charging the right prices or doing the right thing, someone would walk through and throw a brick through their window, you know and I mean, of course, being a little bit more civilized, I guess, in a way. We're trying to do things appropriately now, and we want to make sure that like your tattoo ink is, you guys, I remember back when you first came out with the gel stencil stuff, like I remember that coming out on the scene, and like that bright green color,
Mhm.
like that was marketing in itself.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be where you are today if that was a horrible product, you know um to be able to be reviewed and recognized by your same level of manufacturers would be huge. And I think that's great. I've seen the evolution of labeling on ink,
Yeah.
from being a a address label written, fire red,
Right.
like
Right.
from
Right.
that to looking at like these numbers, and like, what used to be called MSDSs, now there are SDSs, right?
Right.
Uh, to see stuff like that coming out, it shows the legitimacy of what we're doing. And that wasn't forced upon us. We did that on our own because we want to be good and safe for our clientele,
Yeah.
not because some government's telling us you have to do this or else.
Right. Well, SDSs are a good example. MSDSs used to be 2 or 3 pages long. They didn't have a lot of information in them.
Right.
I think maybe 10 years ago or something, they said, oh, it's not MSDS anymore. Now it's SDS. Oh, and by the way, now they're 16 pages long and they need to have all this different information in them. It's crazy because Sean and I were having this conversation. Sean Brown and I were having this conversation a couple weeks ago about SDS sheets. And Sean was saying, the only thing that you technically have to list on an SDS sheet are ingredients that are potentially problematic in the product, that somebody could have a reaction to. They need to be able to reference that SDS to see how to deal with whatever the problem could be. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, I don't want to just have that information on my SDS. I want everything on my SDS. I want I want every ingredient on my SDS. I want you to know completely everything you need to know about that product on that SDS, whether it needs to be there or not. I want full transparency. And I'm not saying that's what everybody has to do. I'm just saying that's what I personally want to do. Like, I'm
Right.
a really big advocate for complete transparency in manufacturing and what's in my product. I feel like that's so important because as a consumer, again, that's me wearing the tattoo artist hat. That's what I want to see out of the products that I use. So therefore, that translates into what I put out in the industry for artists using my products. I want you to have what I would want to have, you know? But
Right.
another interesting thing is that, if I wasn't doing what I was doing right now, I'd probably want to be a lawyer. But you know why I'm not a lawyer? Because I'd have to go to school for 8 years to be a lawyer.
Right.
I can't just be a lawyer. I can't just go buy a law degree off online for $40 and be in a courtroom tomorrow practicing law. It just doesn't work like that. And that's what I mean when I say strengthening the gates. And that's from point of entry for the practitioner, point of entry for the manufacturer. Across the board, the gates have to be strengthened, you know.
Mhm.
You shouldn't just be able to. I mean, dude, one thing that really fucking pisses me bad is like I go on TikTok and I see these tattoo artists promoting 10, 12, 18% lidocaine products. I'm like, this should not even be a thing. Like, this should not even be a thing. Like, I should not be seeing this. No one
No.
should be seeing this. You know, and that's
No.
what I mean. Like, you have to be able to put a stop in the road. There needs to be a block in the road that prevents that from ever making it that far. Like, it should never get there.
Right. Yeah. And the people wanting the freedom of information, like there is a point where it's like all of the good information that gets put out, there's more, double, triple, quadruple amount of bad information put out, and for people to be able to weed through this information, like, okay, yeah, this 10, 15, 20% lidocaine, okay, do you feel the tattoo? All right, you don't. But what happens to its healing? What are you also putting into your body? How are you going about this? That's why the transparency and how is it going to interact with the other products that you're using? You know, we as practitioners need to understand that. And if you're going to buy a machine off Amazon and start tattooing your buddy in your house tomorrow, you're not going to have that information, and that's where, like, the APT is trying to do things like, the PDTT, the prevention of disease transmission, um, is like it's trying to help you understand like different ideas and different things of, like, cross contamination, what this does or what this does, how to recognize what's going on. After 2 years ago, we were in Hampton, Virginia, and Selena, who you had on the other week, she's also my vice president. She's an amazing, amazing person. Uh, Gave a talk about, numbing agent and allergic reactions to it, and how to recognize it and see what's going on. And, I've never been a big, you know, advocate for, using a numbing cream. I don't think that it's necessary. Um, I think your body does a lot of the natural endorphins and stuff on its own and for a reason. Um, and I think that's the way I feel about it. Like, I'm not going to put that out on anybody else, but like, you need to be able to understand what you're doing to people and how you're doing it, and how it's going to react to them. Even with a lot of these different new aftercares, like everybody and their mothers creating some witch's brew in a, cauldron and calling it aftercare,
Yep.
what actually heals the body? The body.
Yep.
No product that you smear on it is going to make it heal any better than the body is going to do to itself naturally anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to spend a good amount of time that we have left really focusing on the APT.
Absolutely.
Um, I want to talk about, because I'll tell you one thing. I told this story to Selena actually when I had her on. I was picking up a prescription at the drugstore a few weeks back, and the lady comes to the counter and she says, "Wow, I really like all your piercings. Who did all your piercings?" And I said, name of my piercer out in South Bend, Noah Hutt. And I said, she's like, "Oh yeah, I know Noah." She said, my daughter's a piercer, down in Terre Haute, and she's an APP piercer. And I said, yeah, I only go to APP people. Like I just don't trust a piercer if they're not APP certified.
Yeah.
And that's honest truth because I know I've had piercing get jacked up before, by going to someone that I don't know what their background is. I don't know what their training is. I just walk into a shop and like, oh yeah, I want to get my ear pierced, and
Right.
it just doesn't get done right. There's anatomy. People don't think about that. You know what I mean? And I think we need to get to a place where consumers and collectors recognize the importance of vetting a tattoo artist, a qualified tattoo artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not going to a tattoo artist that just bought a kit off of Amazon and opened up a shop in their town, and you don't know what their history is. And in my experience as a tattoo artist dealing with the public and tattoo collectors, most of them are, not to sound disrespectful at all, but a lot of people are not educated in how to properly pick a tattoo artist. They just are very spur of the moment and they'll go get a tattoo from whoever.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't understand the risks and possible future regrets that come along with making a spur of the moment decision like that.
Right.
This is why I'm grateful for organizations like the APT, because it's my hope that at some point in time, tattoo collectors have that same mindset that I have when I go get pierced. Like I only want to go get tattooed by an APT certified tattoo artist. You know,
Right.
do you see that uh, as being a realistic thing in the future?
I definitely think that in the future, it's definitely a realistic thing. But again, we have to get, you know, tattooers also on board with this idea. A lot of us tattooers are, we are those people of, we don't like to be told what to do. We don't like to, we've always gone against the grain, and now when there's an organization that's saying, hey, you can be against the grain, but let's have these guidelines. Um, Sometimes there's a visceral reaction to that. And I've lost some friendships, some very close friendships over my involvement with the APT. Uh, but we do have to come to some sort of idea and some sort of organization that can allow us to, and it's again, it's almost like that peer review. Um, we have to come to a consensus that like, hey, this is what's safe, this is what's okay. I don't want to, I'll never get into a conversation unless I'm asked about the artistry aspect of this. I could draw a skull that looks like it would be like cartoony. You could draw a skull that would be very realistic. They're both skulls, they're both the way that we see skulls, but they're different artistry. Now, how we apply those images to the body and how we interact and treat the customer and the quality of the ingredients and products that we use, that's what I'm interested. That education, that health idea is what I'm interested in, not not the design. I'm very, very much interested in what is very tangible, you know.
Yeah, it goes back to the reference that I made about if I could be a lawyer, I'd be a lawyer, but I'm not because I have to go to school for 8 years to do that, right? I don't
Yeah.
want to do that. I don't want to spend 8 years trying to learn that.
No.
But when I reflect on tattoo entry, the point of entry to be a tattoo artist, there is no there is no formalized education plan, right? You
Right.
have tattoo schools out there that are in many cases run by people that aren't even tattoo artists. You have people that have just finished up an apprenticeship 6 months ago taking on an apprentice.
Hmm.
Like they haven't even been tattooing long enough to know everything there is to know about tattooing to even be teaching somebody else how to tattoo.
Right.
That's what I say when I reference strengthening the gates. And I think, at least in my mind, I hope that's what the APT is eventually able to do. And I know that you guys are working on like some sort of a formal. Uh, One thing that I hear a lot of artists say, yeah, we want to talk about that. So one thing that we hear a lot of artists say is this market is too oversaturated, right? Like
Mhm.
there's too many trash artists in here, and I agree with that. It's a harsh way to put it, but there are a lot of people in here not learning the trade properly, and
Correct.
there are a lot of people that want to learn the trade properly. They just don't have the right point of entry. They don't have someone that can give them an apprenticeship. They've tried to get an apprenticeship. They've been told no. They get turned away. There's nobody that has time to spend with them. So, what do we do for those people that really actually care about the craft, want to learn how to do things the right way, but they don't have anyone to teach them? That's where the APT comes in.
Absolutely. And that's where, I mean, I just showed like we do have an apprenticeship syllabus, but to be able to have and to train with that syllabus, we've developed, but we're right now peer reviewing our mastery tattoo program, so that way, just like any other union would be set up, we have the apprenticeship, we have the journeyman, and then we have the master tattooers, journeymen, though I'm not saying that they can't understand and teach people appropriately, but we want the best of the best to teach, not necessarily, the people who are just doing it as a trade, and there's nothing wrong with those journeymen. There's nothing wrong with people being journeymen for their whole career. Instead of creating, journeyman apprentices, I want to take the masters to teach the apprentices and allow them to kind of develop, it's that pyramid, like I want the elite to teach everybody, and for them to be able to have the time and the energy to do so. We would like to create a area where there's the ability to do so, and the point of entry. I would love to see the APT as a point of entry for that. Um, is that going to happen in my 2 years as president? I don't know, probably not. But I am working very hard with, we have an education committee. I'm working very hard with the education committee, and Kate, who is our chair for the education committee, is doing amazing work. She and the education committee came up with this apprentice syllabus, and revised it from, time and time again. Uh, and right now they're also working on the mastery program, and we have, the first iteration of our mastery test, that's been sent out to the board to take a look at, and there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes, and I understand that a lot of APT members don't necessarily see all of the day-to-day work, but we as the board are spending, you know, all day and night working on this stuff, as well as trying to run our own businesses, as well as trying to be family men and women, family people. And, you know, so much time and energy has been put into it. And that's where, this October, we're having our in-person meeting at the New Orleans Tattoo Convention, October 10th through the 12th. And we have our in-person meeting Saturday morning. Uh, that is where you can either log on to our Zoom, or you can come in person and be a part of it and see what we're doing and ask us questions. Like, as a board, like, I know it can be kind of, intimidating, but when it comes down to it, I'm a tattooer. If you want to come up and chat with me, come up and chat with me. I'm here to talk to. That's why I took the presidency. My accessibility is open. My phone is always on. You can call my shop, you can call my cell, you can call my business cell. I don't care. if you have a question and you need some help, let me know, and some of the bigger names, like I've been working, um, Big Jazz, he was on one of the TV shows, reach out to me. He's working on some stuff that he wants to do. And, like I ran into him in the convention. He's like, "Oh man, I'm so glad to see you here." And we talked for a little bit and, we're working on things. Being an accessible board is so important.
Yeah, I want to talk about the structure of the APT. I want to talk
Mhm.
about the history of the APT because as we mentioned in the beginning of the episode, there are a lot of artists out there that I encounter that aren't even really familiar with the APT at all. So I do want to get into that. I want to peel that back a little bit. I want to talk about how long the APT's been here, when it was formed and why it was formed. And then I want to talk about, so that people really understand, I want to talk about the structure of the APT. Obviously we know that you're the president. We know
Mhm.
Selena's the vice president. I want to take a look at, for the listeners, I want to kind of lay out, like, what does that board look like? Who's that board comprised of?
Mhm.
I want to get into every state has a representative. Who are those people? Like, what is the APT in its entirety?
So the APT was formed in 1992 here at the Meadowlands Convention, um, which was, I mean, in a different iteration. This is, was this past weekend. Um, and it was composed because we had noticed that, not we, I wasn't a part of this at this point, but it was noticed that there was no advocacy for tattooing. There was no, I mean, there was the NTA, the National Tattoo Association, but that was more of people like getting together socially, but there was no one to try to help us protect ourselves. Um, and so it was created, and bylaws were written. We were, formed as, we got our nonprofit status, and we've obviously continued. And then there's been definitely points of, like, lower points of the APT of where, like membership had dropped, or there, we weren't sure how the leadership would be, continued. You know, one of our founding members just recently passed, Dennis Dwyer. But even before that, Mike was a president of the APT, for I think 10 years, because nobody else would want to step up and do it. He held the torch, you know. And I feel very lucky in my participation in the APT because I came in the resurgence of it. Um, and part of that resurgence of the APT was definitely people like, Ben Shaw. When the MOCRA first kind of came out, Ben was doing what I was doing with New York, but on a federal level, and just getting people to know and understand what was going on. And he brought a lot of tattooers, to the idea of there being an alliance for us, by us. And like, we've had a huge resurgence in membership again, and it's so important because it's what allows us to, you know, do research, put things out. We've worked on a paper, and we're getting the paper peer reviewed and worked on now, which talks about, you know the application of tattooing. I can't reveal too much about it until it's actually published.
Yeah.
But we've been working on things on defining what tattooing is, scientifically, not just, like the oral history, but writing it down and getting it scientifically authenticated. Um, and that's what the APT is doing for the practitioners and industry as a whole, because no one else has been doing it, and if we allow the government to do what they want to do, then they're going to just create laws like standing at a Keurig machine saying, "Oh man, it would be cool if tattoos were this way."
Yeah.
And that is a direct quote from 2014 that the senator said. He's like, I was getting coffee from my Keurig machine, and I was like, man, it would be really cool if tattoos were, inks were like this. And I was like, well, you obviously don't understand tattooing if you're comparing us to coffee pots,
Yeah. K cups.
K cups. Yeah. Um,
And then he went to work that day and wrote a law.
exactly.
He's like, this is a great idea.
It is. I can't even. Anyway, um, so what is the leadership of APT, and what is that composed of? Okay. Obviously, you've done the interview with Selena, the vice president. We have Caroline Evans, who's been a executive board um, for a long time. She's now our treasurer, and then we have Angela Teresi as our secretary. I'm obviously the president, but we've talked enough about me. But we have so many amazing other tattooers that are on this board, which is composed of about 13 people, uh, ranging in years of experience. People like Sean Anderson, who's been tattooing since I think it was 1987 is when he started tattooing under Sailor Moses. We've had, and it goes all the way from there to people that we have a doctor, we have a medical doctor, Matt Davis, on our board that helps us, and he's been, he's had a body, he's got a bodysuit, he's been getting tattooed for 15 years, but he has the medical professional to help us substantiate things, um, and we're all guided by our amazing home office executive director, Julie, who is like, if you call the APT or you write the APT an email, she is the person that is going to, talk to you first, and she really holds down the fort. She's our one paid employee, and so with all of us, we also have what's called our advisor board. People like Don Cora, Pat Sumatra, Jesse, who is our huge PDTT. He does all of our trainings right now, and he's been doing this for so long, like it's almost second nature, But we also have like Troy Temple from Villain Arts, like he's one of our advisors, and he's been tattooing for a long time, and doing so many things, and he's so graciously to allow us the space to put uh, uh our in-person meet on at his show in New Orleans. It's just he's always so gracious and amazing. And I was talking to him this weekend at the Meadowlands convention. He's like, he's so busy with everything that like he misses being like an official board director, but like as an advisor, he's able to help us out, and kind of he's got out of any of us, he has got his pulse on the tattooing because he's dealing with the practitioners and the clientele on a daily basis, all together, all at the same time,
Hundreds
so
at a time.
it's cool to see him, and I appreciate all of his help and his knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a stacked deck, a powerful table of individuals together trying to work in the better interest of the industry. And hats off to you for taking the reins of the presidency and assuming that responsibility in the already busy life that you have as a tattoo artist and a father and just as a person. It's a lot of responsibility to take. So thank you for that, and hats off for that. I think you're doing a great job so far.
Thank you.
I hope other people are telling you that as well. It's probably a pretty thankless job most of the time.
Yeah, I get yelled at a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So let me say thank you. But
uh,
no, I did want to talk a little bit too. I want to kind of get into the fact that you have representatives from each state and kind of what are their responsibilities.
so we are we're revamping our state advisory boards. And so we're trying to create it so we have one advisor or a state rep for every state in the United States, and of course we have some people that aren't not people, but we have some states that don't have advisors. And if anybody's interested, reach out to us via email or on our Circle platform. The head of that is Don Cora, and he's being assisted by Caroline Evans. And what the state board does, or the state advisors do, is they keep an eye on what's going on in the state, and if there's anything that they think is important to be looked at or brought up to the board, or they're our boots on the ground, you know people that have us see what's going on in each individual state. During 2014, I probably would have been the you know state rep for New York State.
Sure.
But we just need people to keep an eye on, like legislation or things that need assistance in each individual state. And they meet monthly, and it's through our Circle platform.
Yeah, it's good. I've gotten pretty involved in things since becoming a member of the APT. So obviously I know the inner workings of all of that a little bit, but I think it's important because just kind of paint the picture of what the APT looks like for people that aren't familiar.
Mhm.
And also to note, you just said a couple times now that you're going to be having a in-person event at the Villain Art Show in New Orleans next month.
Mhm.
Any artist or person that's interested in learning more about the APT and you're going to be at that show, encourage you to seek out. Are you going to have a public? I'm not quite familiar with what the agenda is for the weekend there. I know you said you're going to have a thing on Saturday morning.
Yep.
Is that open to any artist, or is that an APT member only thing, or a little bit of both?
So we will have a booth there. We'll have a booth at the Villain Arts Show where you can come up and talk to us. And we'll be taking turns at the booth if you want to come and meet and chat. Please don't ask for autographs. We don't do that. No. But then Saturday morning we have our membership meeting, which is where you come and you can talk to us. But you can also sign up to be a member if you want at our booth. We'll be processing stuff like that, or if you have questions or you want to talk to about different things that are going on in your area or in your state. Um, it'll be really awesome to have that there. But I've never turned anybody away because they don't have a membership card. And if you want to come and you want to be at our membership meeting, please come and be at our membership meeting. Come see what we're doing. One thing that I've said uh, the whole time that I've been in advocacy is that I'm fighting for people whether they're a member of my community or not. I'm fighting for people whether I like you or not. I think you should have the right to tattoo safely whether you are part of my inner circle or not. And I will fight for that right until I draw my last breath.
Yeah, I think you're really good at that. I think that's another important thing to point out because even from the manufacturers, this is one thing that Sean and I have made a point to focus on, particularly in the creation of TIMA and integrity, is that look, there's no face associated with this. It's like there's no emotion attached to this. It doesn't matter how I feel about a particular manufacturer or an artist. We're focused on the bigger the bigger, you know, uh, scope. We're
Right.
focused on the bigger picture, and that is safety, and that includes everyone, no matter what your walk is or what your belief system is, or it does. None of that even matters. So
Nope.
I think that's a very important thing to note as well. It's an open door policy. If you have interest, come hear us,
Please
ask questions, get to know us.
challenge us.
Yeah, challenge
I
is a big
want you
thing.
to challenge us because that's how we're all going to grow as people.
Yeah, and that's it. That's why it's important to highlight that these groups are not just Mick,
Mm-mm.
what Mick wants to do. It's a board. It's discussions amongst numerous people in the industry, numerous experiences, numerous walks of life, all contributing and voting on things. It's not a steamroll application. We bring things to the table, we discuss things, we decide whether it's a good thing or if it's a bad thing, and that's how progress is made. Like you said, through challenge. So
Yeah.
it's good to point that out as well.
Even even on our board meetings, I try not to vote unless there is a need for a tiebreaker
Right,
because it's not the will of me, it's the will of everybody else. It's the will of tattooing,
a
It's
collective.
right. It's not me.
Right. So let's talk about membership a little bit, and then
Okay.
we can wrap up after that. But what are your what are your struggles with membership? What can we do to help bring more membership to the APT? What do you need from the tattoo community?
Well, the biggest thing is to get the word out, just like any organization or any business, people need to know that it's there. Um, and it's real easy to apply. You just get onto our safe tattoos.com, or if you even just look up Alliance of Professional Tattooists online, it'll bring you right there. And you can join there. There's different levels. And there's everything from the professional tattooist, which is 3 years and above, associate tattooist, which is 3 years and below, cosmetic tattooist, and associate non-artist. And there's obviously different pay levels to there. Um, and then there's also corporate sponsors. And now, if you become a corporate sponsor, we're not saying that we're not necessarily promoting you as that this is what APT people use, but you believe in what our ideals are. And that's very important to establish, is that if you're a corporate sponsor, you know, you're a manufacturer organization that believes in our vision and our mission, you know, and we're not here to promote necessarily you. We're not here to say that you're the only one or you're the best, but we're here to say you guys support us and we're here for you, you know. Not non-associate or associate non-artist is, that's a real easy. All you have to do is be an enthusiast, and that's $75 a year. It gets you the ability to be at all of our events, and enjoy, yeah, the non-tattooing training and chatting with people. Piercers and health department officials can be a part of that. Cosmetic tattooists, that's pretty self-explanatory. Associate tattoo artists, those are for tattoo artists that have been tattooing less than 3 years, for your apprentices, and you can still have, the membership ID and the access to our circle community and full voting rights at the membership meetings. And then professional tattooists, that's the full membership. You get the first time that you take your PDTT is $75, but every retake there as a professional tattooist, you get free retakes. So, if you have to get recertified for your PDTT and show it to your local government, free retakes every year,
You only pay for that once.
you pay for that once. That's it. And you know, now I've brought up the Circle platform a few times, and what the Circle platform is it has a huge community of like-minded individuals. Whether you fully agree with everybody or not, you can have that discussion there. Um, but there is different events that happens every Monday. We have the Monday Mojo, which is members only event where you can kind of get in there and just chat about tattooing and chat about what's going on. We also have things like let's see, tonight we have a Living Legends Q&A with Joe Capabianco. This is a guy that's been I've been watching him in tattooing since I've gotten tattooed, and I'm super excited to see what's going on with him. You get to chat with him and talk to him, and he's got a really cool podcast going on too that he, it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
had Good Time Charlie on there. We've had you know, Carrie Barbara on there. I'm sure we'll eventually have you on there, as soon as someone asks you. I'm not necessarily saying that has to be there, but we also have an employment law coming up on the 17th, where we're going to have an attorney on there, Shannon Jenkins, Esquire. She's going to be there. It's, again, another members only event. There's so much going on, and there's something for everybody. If you're interested in history, we've got Jay Brown doing stuff. If you're interested in just like hanging out, that's the Monday Mojos. There's so much going on, and just not enough time to do it. And if you want to get more involved, with the political aspect of things or the organizational kind of things like that, you can join the APT and then eventually become a board member, and then being a board member, you start taking like those really active steps in creating things and change for our industry and our future. That's our legacy. Our legacy is making sure that we leave tattooing better than we found it.
Yeah, just speaking from my own experience as a member of the APT, I'll tell you that, and let's be honest, I mean, the point membership is not expensive in terms of
No.
membership. It's not expensive. And you get a lot of benefits. I mean, even just to me, having access to the Circle platform is tremendous. I mean, excluding all the stuff that you just mentioned, even just to the point of the connections that I've been able to make through the Circle platform. I mean, I've met so many new artists through there, people that I wouldn't normally talk to in my day to day, you know what I mean? Like they're active on there. So now I'm having conversations with these people, and they're good conversations, and it's a nice breath of fresh air from platforms like Facebook or other social media platforms like that, where you have tattoo groups. But in my experience, and it hasn't happened to me, but just from observations that I see, a lot of times those are very negative spaces. It's like you could
Mm-hmm.
post a tattoo in there and ask for critique, and people just kind of like poo poo all over it. Whereas if I posted the same tattoo in the Circle group, it's going to be a lot more constructive and positive feedback. It's not going to be all that negativity. The APT to me is much more of like a brother sisterhood type of an organization, where it's just a lot of like-minded individuals with their heads in the same places, focused on the same things, talking about constructive things, and just really trying to help build each other up. And
We're a true community of peers.
yeah, and I would say that alone is worth the membership fee, not to mention all the extra stuff that comes along with the membership. And we don't even talk, we're trying to get insurance stuff. We're working on that. We've been working
Right.
on that for several months now, trying to get universal insurance benefits for all the members of the APT, so that we can have affordable health care and liability insurance and things like
Right.
that.
And it's things like that the tattoo community are so behind on. Like we don't have like the same rights as, like, say, a union would. Like the electrical union. They have that collective bargaining. They have that ability to lobby and they have that ability to come together and get that health insurance at a reasonable rate instead of being on like the Affordable Care Act. Things like that are things that we're trying to work towards and move forward so we can be looked at. Not only, we all know we're a legitimate business at this point, but we need the United States government to notice that we are legitimate and we're doing the right things to take the steps and to be right.
Right. Well, Mick, I want to once again thank you for all the hard work that you're putting in. It doesn't go unnoticed. I certainly recognize you and respect all the work that you're putting in, and just want to once again say thank you. And I was really looking forward to having this conversation with you today. I think we got a lot of ground covered today, and we had some good conversation, and I really appreciate you taking some time with me today out of your busy schedule to come and talk to me and get this out there for our listeners. And I hope, well, I know I'll see you in New Orleans here in a few weeks. I'm looking forward to that and shaking your hand, and I'm looking forward to the future and continuing to work with you to build a brighter future for tattooing.
Great. Thank you so much for having me on here, Rob. Like, I was really excited about it too. And it's always that, to bring it back, it's that almost that imposter syndrome. It's like, who am I to be talking to, all these great ideas and all these huge things. But it's important for someone to be there, and for me to be able to be there and with, men and women like you and Selena and Sean Brown. It really makes me feel proud. And I know that before Shotzi passed, he said that he was proud of the work that I was doing and that we're doing together. And without all of your help, this wouldn't be possible. So thank you for having me on here and hanging out with me for a little bit. And we'll definitely grab a coffee or something down in New Orleans.
Yeah, man. I look forward to seeing you. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you.
Have a good day. That's a wrap for this episode of The Business of Tattooing. I appreciate you tuning in and being part of this journey to level up the industry one conversation at a time. If you found value in today's episode, do me a favor. Subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another artist who could use this knowledge. Got questions or topics you want me to cover? Hit me up on Instagram at NoFlashNinja or email me at rob@electrumsupply.com. And remember, tattooing is an art, but running a successful business is a skill. Keep pushing, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time on The Business of Tattooing.